In our podcast, Hearing the Unheard Stories of Transformation, we discuss a variety of sensitive subjects such as suicide, suicidal ideation, self harm, abuse, and faith crisis. Viewer discretion is advised. Hi, welcome to our podcast, Hearing the Unheard Stories of Transformation, presented by Pause Wellness. I'm your host, Eric Stoffer, and I am pleased to welcome our continual guest here, Jill Dickey. Hi, Jill.
Hello, Eric. How
How you
are you?
doing?
Good.
Good. Hey, before we get started, I just want to kind of give an update to our listeners. Um, for you listeners who've been tuning in weekly, you know that we've had many guests on our podcast who come on and they share our story, their own stories, and that effort has been great. We hear lots of wonderful different stories, and it helps to smash stigmas and educate and inform and help us build compassion in our community and for those who struggle. And we're going to continue that. Obviously, we've got this kind of side series happening with Jill, and we've had some incredible feedback from our listeners about how helpful these are, and we're going to continue doing these. But I just wanted to give you an update that we will be having more stories coming up as well. So thank you for tuning in each week for both types of podcast that we have going on this. So we hope that providing both of those will be and continue to be helpful and informing for you. So, all right,
I
Jill,
love
thanks
the
for
mix.
taking
I
that
love the
time on.
mix. I love the mix. I just think it's fun to hear the stories and then, like what we're doing, just talking about therapeutic concepts and ideas. It's really fun. I love the
Yeah,
stories.
it's great. We just had the Utah Faith Summit. For those of you who don't know, it was this big event um, last week, and we had some great feedback on that. So we're really excited to get back into to growing and progressing and doing the things we're doing on the podcast. So
I was so sad to miss that. I heard really good things about it. My husband was in the hospital or I totally would have been there. He's okay,
yeah,
everybody. It's fine.
I hope Mike's doing okay.
He's fine. I was just sad to miss the summit and I heard really good things about it. So well done.
No worries.
Okay.
We'll get you involved next time, Jill. You'll be
Yeah,
one
I
of
would
these
love to
breakout
be. I would
sessions.
love to be. Yeah, it's a good cause. Okay, Eric, we've been really milking this topic of differentiation. We have like squeezed everything good out of it. We're
Good.
going to go with it
It's
even
needed.
longer. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anything I can learn about differentiation will bless my life. I already know that, so I'm glad to learn more.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully you'll learn some good stuff today as we talk about some other things. So, just to review, we have been talking about this developmental process of differentiation. You can go back and listen to our first episode that kind of explained what differentiation is. And then we just were like, oh, we need to explore this more in depth. So we did a podcast on emotional awareness and emotional regulation, which covers skills 2 and 3, which are emotional regulation and lowering your reactivity. Then we decided to do 3 episodes on sense of self, like building a strong core sense of self, which is skill number 1 for differentiation. And today we're going to start talking about more in depth skill number 4, which is tolerating discomfort for growth. And I've been really thinking about this topic, and I've come up with 3 things that I think are really helpful for tolerating discomfort for growth. And those are developing a spirit of curiosity. The second one is enhancing our ability to show ourselves self-compassion. And the third one is exploring the concept of personal values. So that's where we're going to head, if that's okay with you.
That's great. So basically, I should settle in and get uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, I'm going to teach you how to tolerate the discomfort
That's
better.
right. That's
Yes.
right. Be okay with discomfort and learn how to create comfort in discomfort.
Yeah. Or at least at the very, I mean, I don't know if I'm okay with discomfort, but the fact that I know that it's leading to something really valuable is helpful for me. And I'm often talking about curiosity and compassion and that connection. Okay. So we're going to just kind of like expand on that because, we're all here in this human condition with all the difficulties and challenges that we have, and human relationships can be both, deeply beautiful and deeply challenging. And so the specific challenges that life presents and the challenges that we have in human relationships, these are like elegantly designed mechanisms for human growth and development. If we choose to let the challenges and the discomfort that's kind of inherent in them work on us in a purposeful way.
Yeah.
But there's certain kind of qualities that we can develop or skills that we can develop that can help us do this a little bit better. And so, if we want to become wiser, stronger, and more mature, we really do need to become better at tolerating and handling discomfort, like emotional discomfort, mental discomfort, relational discomfort, and even sometimes physical discomfort. Because I haven't really worked out a way to kind of circumvent discomfort as a human. Have you figured that out?
Well, isn't that really why we have so many problems? Is because that is exactly what we try to do. We try to circumvent it, and that's what's created all of these different, approaches that we take, from
Yeah.
sarcasm to maladaptive, all those maladaptive mindsets and behaviors that we exhibit. And it's just because we don't know how to sit in the pocket of discomfort in a functional way.
Yeah. And, I don't blame us. We're adaptive creatures and discomfort isn't fun. And so we'll think of a lot of ways to avoid it. But sometimes the only way out is through. But
Yep.
there can be ways to fortify that moving through that can help us. I do have a lot of clients that come in and they're like, hey, I want to change this and I want this to be better. And I don't like this in my life, but I want to solve those problems, but I don't want to be uncomfortable doing it. They're not really saying that directly, but in a roundabout way, they're saying, can you help me figure out how to do this and not feel uncomfortable? And, I'm sad to say I don't have that magic wand. I just
Right.
haven't figured out where to purchase that and how to make it work in a therapy setting. And, I'm not sure that I would actually want it if there was one. Because what I do see is when people learn how to tolerate that discomfort and use it as grist for the mill to get stronger, they tend to grow and develop in really important ways. And it's really lovely to sit and watch that.
It's kind of
Because,
like, maybe we've mentioned this before, but that Supreme Court justice long ago that said, I wouldn't give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I'd give my life for the simplicity on the far side of complexity.
Mhm,
It sounds complex, but really it's simplicity without getting through the complexities of life is kind of like ignorance. We like to kind of
mhm.
bury our head in the sand, but if we're willing to do the work through the complexities, we find simplicity again on the far side of it, but it's informed and it's growth and it's strength that has been developed because we haven't turned away from those complexities.
Yeah, right. I think that quote does apply. And what you're saying is kind of where we're
And
headed.
the
Because,
other well-known one is the there's no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone.
oh yeah, that's a really good one. That simplifies. Yeah, I like that. I never heard that one before.
You haven't?
Oh, where have I been?
Well, you've been putting your head in the sand.
I guess so. Trying to avoid discomfort, probably.
Yeah, yeah,
But, discomfort is just part of the human condition. It's part of the game. And so let's play the game in smart ways. All right.
yeah.
So the good news is that happiness, joy, and connection are also part of the fabric of life. So we don't want to be all doomsday here, but the more we can tolerate that discomfort, the more we're able to connect to the happiness and the joy and the connection that we want. They kind of go hand in hand. So, okay, so in review, what will help us build this resilience and this ability to tolerate discomfort? It's that we're going to talk about curiosity, self-compassion, and values. That's where we're headed. So if you remember, Eric, we in our third episode on sense of self, we talked about qualities of the core self, and two of them, one of them was curiosity, and one of them was compassion. And so these are real qualities of the true self, of the self with a capital S. So we're going to try to tap into those. And you'll hear me use curiosity and compassion all the time in these episodes. I'm just going to beat it to death because I just think they're so valuable when we're working with stuff like this. So let's be a little bit more specific about what we mean by discomfort, what we're tolerating. What are we getting curious about? Because I think getting curious about the discomfort we're feeling can be really helpful. But what's the discomfort we're talking about? So I'm just going to give a couple examples just to kind of, pinpoint exactly what kind of discomfort I'm talking about when I'm talking about tolerating discomfort for growth. So I just thought of like, let's see, 5 or 6 examples right here that will kind of give a flavor for what I'm saying. The first one is that I thought of is not having control. We are control freaks as human beings, and we like to feel in control.
Like predictability.
Yeah, predictability, certainty, control, those are things that human beings like, but they're pretty elusive.
Mhm.
And so we know we can't, like thinking relationally, can you control other people, Eric? Like
Um,
really? Maybe you can get them to comply, but can you really
Sometimes
control?
it's not for lack of trying, but, but no.
Exactly. Exactly. But we really can't control others. A lot of times we can't control our circumstances. We've talked a lot about how we can't always control our internal experience and shouldn't necessarily try to. And so that lack of control is hard for human beings to handle, and that tolerating that lack of control can be discomfort.
The very existence of vulnerability
You
is
bet.
recognizing we cannot control.
Right. Another one I thought of is just anxiety, which I think is kind of inherently connected to the fact that we can't control things. And I don't mean necessarily anxiety that's clinical, although I am talking about that as well. But I'll use that word quite often because there's just anxiety in tension in being human and in tolerating differences in relationships and things like that. There's kind of this inherent anxiety, and I think it comes from the fact that we can't control those things. The other one I thought of was like the tolerating the challenge of negative emotions. We really explored that in depth in our emotional regulation podcast. Um, but for instance, like tolerating the feeling of anger and not um, splashing it all over everyone when we feel
Right.
it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
tolerating a lot of discomfort, metabolizing discomfort, not to, you know, throw our garbage all over other people.
Can I ask
Another
you a
one,
question?
yeah, you bet.
So, in terms of like dating and pursuit of marriage, um,
Hmm.
if we are creatures who don't like discomfort, and we're searching for a suitable companion, are we just looking for people who are not going to give us discomfort, which means we're not really going to have a whole lot of growth if that's the case? You get what I'm asking?
Yeah, and I mean it's a big question with probably a really
Yeah.
long answer, but let me see if I can give
Sorry.
you like a short one, which is probably like, yeah, I mean, I think when I was looking for a companion, I was thinking, okay, who doesn't rub me the wrong way? Who doesn't bug me? Who has qualities that I can tolerate? So yeah, I think so. But can I kind of take a different direction with what you
Sure.
just said?
Yeah.
I was talking to a client the other day, and she got up the courage to ask somebody out that she'd been liking for a long time, and the date didn't go well. And
Hmm.
we met and she was really discouraged and just wanting to give up on the process of, and we talked about, you'll not be surprised by this, tolerating the discomfort of not knowing if your dating efforts are going to succeed. And that discomfort of going through several different people to find a good match for you. And that's a lot of discomfort tolerance when you're out there in the dating world looking for a partner and it's not coming really fast and it's not happening the way you want it to. And so when we're pursuing things that really matter to us, there's a lot of discomfort that we're tolerating when things aren't panning out as quickly or as evenly or as nicely as we'd like them to. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because in our relationships, and this isn't just about relationships necessarily, but if we're just assuming that the ideal relationship is the one without struggle,
Hmm.
well, then we're kind of also saying we may not realize that we're also saying that the ideal relationship is the one without growth.
Yeah.
We've got to have struggle in order to have growth. If this was weightlifting, I mean, I know we make that parallel all the time in these discussions, but if we're weightlifting and we're assuming that we can build muscle without resistance,
Yeah.
Well,
It's a
then
good
we'll quit right
metaphor.
away.
hmm Well, and I have news for people. Even if you think you found the one that's not going to cause you any discomfort, and you're just going to
That's
have a
it.
happy life, you're in a fantasy land.
That is
So,
exactly it. Like why, like in our pursuit, like why are we assuming that the ideal relationship is, or that we found someone who's not going to give us any resistance, or
yeah.
we're not going to give them any resistance?
The other thing that I thought of was the feeling of aloneness when you're used to enmeshment to manage your difficult feelings. So when you're used to using others to manage your emotions and feelings, and they're not providing that for you, you need to it can be difficult to tolerate the discomfort of feeling a little bit of separation and aloneness when you're trying to manage yourself.
So, let's pick that apart for just a second.
hmm
So, someone who has managed their discomfort by controlling someone, or making sure that the relationships by force or manipulation or whatever tactic they're using, so that they don't have discomfort. When someone starts to learn better and they start to differentiate, then you're going to feel more discomfort because it's
Yes,
not working for you anymore.
Eric, I'm so glad you brought that up because this is what's interesting about the frameworks that I use to help people work with this is what I have to let them know is when you're breaking old habits that are not relationally sound, like maybe people pleasing in the, maladaptive sense or using control and manipulation, or even when you're use distance to manage yourself and you want to stop doing that, anxiety isn't going to go down, anxiety is going to go up, right? It's going to increase before it goes down.
Yeah.
And so that tolerating of that discomfort when you change patterns of behavior that have been very instinctual and knee jerk for you, but have not been accruing to the well-being of yourself or your relationships, it can be very difficult to tolerate the discomfort of not doing those things, So I'm really glad
It's
that you
it
brought that up.
Yeah, it's so funny because as Emily and I've worked on some things through this, she, she's a massive people pleaser. And I'm not one to shy away from a little conflict. And but because she's a people pleaser, we have very little conflict in our relationship at times, or so we think, right? But
It's
then as
just
she starts,
underground.
that's right. And then as she
Yeah.
starts to learn, oh, I need to speak up more, or I shouldn't be such a people pleaser. And she starts doing it. I'm like, I'm really happy for you, Emily, that you're learning to defend
To
for yourself.
advocate for yourself.
But can you please not do that to me?
So
So
you're
I'm
both
just like
tolerating
always saying,
discomfort. She's tolerating the discomfort and anxiety that comes for speaking up for herself in ways that she hasn't done before. And you're tolerating the discomfort of getting some pushback that you're not
that's
used to.
right.
Yep.
And so as
And
soon
that's
as
the
I say
exact,
that, and I'm like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do it that way, I'm like, that's my problem. That's not her problem. That's my problem. I
yep,
have to adjust. I have to
right,
tolerate that discomfort.
right.
I hope
Okay.
she's not listening right now.
Too
I
late.
don't want to admit
It's out there
that.
in the world. This will be out there in the world. She can listen. I'm going to tell her to listen.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to get to curiosity, I promise, but I think it's good to just talk about what exactly is the discomfort that we're talking about that we're trying to tolerate. Okay, and then this is where we're going to get to curiosity. Eric, this is really fun because I follow you on Instagram, of course, and I watch what you post, and you post some really fun reels. In fact, I started following a really cool musician that you posted a song of. Oh my gosh, he was so good.
Are you
Anyway,
talking about Stephen Wilson Jr.?
yeah. Oh my
Oh
gosh.
man,
So talented.
unbelievable
So
stuff.
good. Yeah. Anyway, so I like following your stuff. But the other day you posted a reel that was Dr. Chatterjee interviewing Gabor Mate. Do
Oh
you
yeah.
remember that reel?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what I loved about it, they're talking about my two favorite things, curiosity and compassion. And I loved what they had to say. It was so great. So maybe Eric, when this comes out, you can repost that reel because
Yeah.
people can go listen to it. But I think it was really good. Gabor Mate is a well-known psychoanalyst, really smart guy with a lot of cool things to say. And
Amazing.
Dr. Chatterjee is interviewing him. And they were talking about the side effects of getting curious. Here we are getting to the curiosity part. And he was talking about how important developing this quality of curiosity inside yourself towards the world and towards yourself, how important it is, because curiosity leads to understanding and to understand is to forgive both yourself and others, right? And it also being curious also leads to compassion. So it leads to forgiveness and understanding and compassion. Do we like
Yeah, that's a pretty
the
good trend.
byproducts of
Yeah.
curiosity? It's
Yeah.
pretty great, right?
It's a good package deal.
Okay, so I don't know if you're like me, but it is easier sometimes for me to get curious about other people's behavior, um, and that would most likely lead to understanding them, which leads to an increased compassion towards them. I don't know if you've had this experience, but when you truly get open-minded and curious about another person and you really let them talk without an agenda, you start to understand them. And what I feel is an increased sense of compassion towards them.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah.
What's really interesting though is curiosity, I think, can bring about the information that you need to gain that compassion. And sometimes you just discover it without the curiosity. Like sometimes, the best way I know how to describe this, like, let's say in my classes, I have a student who has got some behaviors that really bother the classroom dynamic, right? And in my head as a teacher, I might go, man, that student is driving me crazy, or man, I wish that student would engage more. I wish that student was better behaved or something. And then without, not out of disciplinary measure, but I just seek to learn a little bit more about the student. And then I learn about something about their family or their parents or something they're going through, like a loss or, and then more information. And I sit there and I go, why didn't I should assume good intent because no wonder they're behaving this way.
Yeah.
And now when they behave that way in the classroom, I'm not sitting there going, "Ah, that student is being so belligerent." I think, okay, I understand why they're doing this. I have a lot more patience, a lot more compassion with them. Doesn't necessarily always mean that the behavior is okay, but
Hmm.
I can work with it. I know how to have a lot more compassion for that situation.
Right. And maybe it helps you tolerate the discomfort a little more when you
Yes.
understand what that person is going through. And I
Yep.
have the same experience every day in my work as a therapist. I mean, we are supposed to get curious. Tell me
Yeah.
about yourself. Tell me what's going on. Help me understand you. And when you have that way of thinking, you learn so much about people. And this has been just shocking to me every time, not shocking, but just like really awe-inspiring, is that everything they're doing makes sense once you get really curious about what's going on in their life and what's going on inside of them and what's going on inside their relationships. And it all makes sense. So I feel like it's easier for me to do that for other people. And it seems like kind of a natural process, you know,
Yeah.
except when I'm really mad and I don't really care about
Right.
what
Right.
that person's going through because I'm trying to
Yeah.
defend myself. That's when I
Yeah.
really need
Yeah.
to get curious and don't, but need to get better at
Ignorance is
that.
bliss.
Yes, exactly. But I wondered, Eric, if you feel like you can do that towards yourself, the same like open curiosity that leads to understanding and compassion and maybe forgiveness. Can you do it to yourself? Do you have that same quality towards yourself?
Well, I'm learning. I would say it's taking me a long time. But just in the last year, I would say I've gotten a lot more curious as to, oh, why do I have that physical response, that physical manifestation? Why is my stomach churning? Why do I feel that tightness in my neck? That tightness in my throat? Why am I feeling so emotional? Why am I so defensive on this? And and connecting the physical response to an emotional stimulus
Mhm.
to that sign. And as I've been curious, I've started to see more connections.
That's so good.
And yeah, I think it has brought out a little bit more compassion towards myself, but I've got 40 plus years of doing things a certain way. And so I think it's going to take a number of years for me to break it all down so I can be a lot more healthy that way.
Where do you think you're learning this like quality of curiosity that you say you're doing more of?
Where what has brought this on?
Yeah, what has made you be more questioning and curious when things arise in you and between you and others?
Well, I would say, and I would say I have permission to share this. I would say it's my daughter. I would say my daughter Lydia, her therapist would say she kicked those doors down.
Yeah.
Her mental illness, she was not going to tolerate living this way, living with the pain that she had. And so she kicked those doors down. And when the implications of her mental illness, the environment that we were providing her as parents, when that therapist suggested, hey, you might want to re-examine the way that you're parenting and the environment that you create.
Hmm.
And if you can change your climate, you'll actually help her.
Hmm.
And so when we were curious about that, not defensive, and just started to really study and then started to implement, started to see some things. And then it was, I mean, you can only do that for and see results and not go, gee, I wonder what other ways this is happening in my life
Yeah, beautiful. That's
and
so
for
good.
myself, right?
Yeah, that's so good. I love it. A lot of times this happens when people have big problems to solve, right? So
Yeah.
can we talk about your defensiveness for a second? Because I want to make a
I don't
connection.
have any. I don't know what you're
Well,
talking
you just said you did.
about.
You just said I
The
was,
irony.
first of all, and it is when things in your environment are not going well, a lot of times our response is defensiveness because we're responding to something that feels like a threat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Hey, Jill, you
Something in our environment is wrong and it's off, and that feels really threatening to us. So let's talk about this threat response, defensiveness. Okay. Because I think this can really help people. When we feel safe, we feel free to explore. And when we feel in a space of threat, our focus narrows and we kind of lose interest in getting in exploring and being curious, And
so reactive
evolutionarily,
versus
yeah,
proactivity.
yeah. And if you think about it in an evolutionary way, this makes sense. At moments during which our ancestors faced threats, in their day, maybe often predators that they may have had, it would not have been smart to sit and ponder about their behavior or their inner state or wonder about a beautiful leaf or a flower. Okay. They just had
Right.
to, and we are descendants of people who got eaten if they sat and pondered.
Yeah.
Yes. But today, most of our fears that we face and the kind of threats that we face are social, such as like conflict in important relationships, like you're pointing to with a daughter, a precious
Yep.
daughter. And, these threats feel like they last longer than running from a tiger. So it feels like we have some barriers to feeling safe enough to get curious. And you're kind of speaking to that. That was not your natural response, was to sit and think, hey, I wonder what's going on here,
Mhm.
Let's ponder about this. So, repeated traumatic experiences or anxiety can put us in a space where, the threat system is hyperactivated and it makes it really difficult for us to access our drive for discovery and curiosity. But research shows, here's the interesting part. Research shows that building an ability to get curious when we're in distress about the world, about ourselves, about our relationships, has a protective factor for us against increasing anxiety and depression that can happen when we're facing something difficult. And so it has all of these benefits. What do you think about that?
Oh, can you explain that in a different way? Like, how would you simplify that?
I would simplify it by saying it's not our natural response necessarily to get curious when we feel our fight or flight kicking in.
Right.
Right? So we kind of have to notice, and you talked about this a little bit, you kind of have to notice, oh boy, my fight or flight or freeze mechanism is kicking in. I'm kind of going limbic, in my brain.
Yeah.
And maybe what it can slow me down can be this sense of curiosity. I wonder what.
Yeah. Do you think we could Pavlov's dog that? Do you know what I mean by asking that quite
Just make it
like
instinctual and
learn yeah, learn how to train our brains to go, okay, I'm having a limbic response. Hmm. What's going on?
well, I have a note here on my notes. It says exactly this. Much like other well-being skills for well-being, neuroplasticity research, that means that our brains are neuroplastic. They can learn things and
Flexible.
change. They're flexible. Neuroplasticity research has shown that it's possible to train yourself to be more curious.
So we
There you
can.
go.
We can ring
Yes.
that bell.
Yep. We can ring that bell. And I can attest to it personally. I have learned to get, as soon as I notice myself getting anxious or defensive or I'm in some sort of threat response, I will notice myself going, wow, what are you so scared of? What are you threatened by? Like, calm, like what's going on?
I've noticed that too.
Hmm.
I've noticed like Andrew, our brother, like if you start doing that, you'll get curious about his behavior, or you'll tell him to be curious about his behavior, and he'll go, "Nope, you can't do that to me. Don't
Yeah.
don't therapize me or whatever."
He won't let me psychoanalyze him.
Yeah,
Nope,
don't
not letting. I'm like,
psychoanalyze me.
oh, because he'll ask me a question. I'll be like, I don't know. What do you think? Just get curious about it. Because that's usually my approach. What do you think? What do you think about it? Go inside and get curious. Nope, nope, you can't
So
psychoanalyze me.
you feel like you've.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just the education and the new pursuit of becoming a therapist, or
Yeah, I think because I know how valuable it is to understand the self, because what happens is you get more understanding and then you get more compassion, and I see it between me and others when I'm compassionate and curious, I mean curious towards them. And I think, well, they would work on me, right?
yeah,
And so you can turn it around. I think the reason why it's more instinctual is just because I now know from experience how valuable it is.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, education, whether it's for an actual education or just to educate yourself.
Yeah, and I just have it from, personal experience. When I get curious about myself, I learn quite a bit about why I'm upset and what needs to be addressed within myself or between me and someone else or in my world. Just helps me know what I need to do.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what the positive things that happen when you get curious, because I think the research is really cool on this. So what they have proven in research is that practicing curiosity is associated with a bunch of things. So let me list them because I think this is exciting. So overall, enhanced psychological well-being. It also builds personal grit and helps with meaningful endurance. It helps increase subjective happiness. It deepens the meaning in life. It lowers your rate of negative emotions that you experience. And it also is associated with improvements in memory and aging well. It contributes to lifelong learning because curiosity is a motivator for learning and it can help you become a lifelong learner, which people have, there's lots of benefits to that kind of mindset. And again, and this is the big one, it helps you become more compassionate and understanding that everyone's story is complex as well as your own.
So those are things that the data shows. Is that what
Yeah.
you mean? The
Yep.
data is showing after research has been done that these are the benefits and byproducts of being more
Of
curious.
practicing curiosity towards yourself and others. I mean, that's a
I
pretty,
love that.
pretty great list.
Yeah, it's a good package deal.
Yeah. So it's a good quality to be thinking about.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's not necessarily talked about as a therapeutic tool, but a lot of therapists use it. And we've talked a little bit about internal family systems model, the IFS model. Um, and I love that model and I use it a lot with clients because it just encourages curiosity like crazy.
Yeah.
Anytime clients are experiencing things, the question is, get curious. What is that part of you trying to accomplish? What does it want you to know? How can you understand this more? And the more curious people get, I see things change.
One of I think we've mentioned this in the past, but we've talked about binary mindset or dichotomous thinking, right?
Mhm.
And one of our therapists here at Pause, our director, Julie Swenson, she always talks about um, where we have a tendency to go, it's either this or it's this, you know?
Mhm.
And she'll say, a good question to ask yourself is maybe, maybe not. The maybe, maybe not really kind of sets up a posture of curiosity.
Yep.
Like maybe it's this, maybe it's not this, and vice versa for both ends of the spectrum.
Mhm.
So, what can you learn about what's in the middle? Be curious.
Yep.
And when we've done that with our children, as they're kind of getting panicked to the binary mindset, we'll just say maybe, maybe not. What do
Yep.
you learn from that?
I love that. That's such a really easy, quick tool you can use when you're going into that black and white thinking.
Yeah.
And I do think that good therapy, this is just, good therapy according to Jill, but I think a lot of therapists would agree with me that if you're doing therapy well, you're just really helping people become more curious about themselves, about their world, and a lot about their relationships. And we're talking
You
about this is part of a series, a long series, because we're just going crazy with this, but a series on differentiation, which is that ability to be connected to yourself and who you are when you're closely connected to other people. And think about what this quality and ability to be curious can do relationally when you're having conflict or challenge with another person.
yeah.
Yeah.
And on our podcast we've talked about how this is a faith-based organization, Pause Wellness. And the great thing is you look at that list of byproducts of this work. Can you read them one more time there?
Yeah, you
What are
bet.
they?
I would love to read them one more time because
And
I
then
love it.
I just want to invite our listeners as you read these, as she reads these, to consider the faith context of these byproducts.
Oh, good. That's a good exercise. That would be great. So, benefits are good byproducts of practicing curiosity. It's associated with enhanced psychological well-being, positive emotions, personal grit, higher levels of resilience, and meaningful endurance. Okay? Higher levels of subjective happiness, deepening meaning in your life, lower rates of negative emotion, improvements in memory and even aging well. And then, of course, lifelong learning. That's a big one. I almost forgot that. Don't want to forget that because I think
Mm.
that's so great. Because even learning about relationships and about yourself in relationships, that's learning, right? So get more
Yep.
curious. And then, of course, compassion. I think you can't go wrong developing more compassion for others and for the self because life is really challenging and difficult. Discomfort is hard. So building compassion can really help us tolerate that discomfort when we feel it.
Yes, and that's so good because yeah, if our listeners are thinking from a faith perspective, your belief in deity, whether it's Christianity or the goodness of higher causes, um, just try to consider how this science plays into those faith principles of goodness, the
Hmm.
goodness of humanity, the goodness of our personal health, and to enjoy life rather than just get by because it's total drudgery.
Yep. And I mean, I personally believe in a higher power, a deity that wants us to be curious because we're here to learn.
Get all the education you can get.
Hmm. And not just about, not like just formal education in a school,
Right.
but I
All
think even our
education.
most important education happens between ourselves and others and within ourselves and our challenges. So the idea is that this curiosity, this quality that we can develop, this, capacity that we can develop to become more curious can help us tolerate that discomfort because we can get curious about that discomfort and we might learn something from it. And that could push us to higher levels of growth and development as a person. So it's this really powerful quality.
Yeah.
And, I think what would be a good way to end this, because we've been talking about differentiation quite a bit, is to maybe I want to share with you some questions that you could ask that, you can write these down if you're listening to this, but these are some
Yeah.
questions that I think are really useful when I'm curious about my responses, my inner responses to what's going on around me. And usually it's relational, almost everything is if you think about it. But
Mhm.
these are the questions that I like to use for myself. Okay, let me share them with you. Here are some questions you can ask. Okay, number one, what factors in my life or the person that I'm with, what factors of their everyday life could it be influencing my reaction or their reaction? What are some factors that you can be curious about and try to understand that could be producing that reaction, either internally or in them?
Mhm.
Question number two, how does my experience differ from their experience? How are we? We're both experiencing different things. We're different people. Let's get curious about what's my experience and what's their experience, because it could be different and I want to understand it. How does their experience differ from mine? Question number 3, why am I reacting this way?
Yeah.
Or why are they reacting in this way? Not in why are they reacting this way, but like,
Right.
why are they reacting that way?
Yeah. I keep the thought that keeps going through my head on each of these, Jill, is when we say to ask why, it's not why. It's more,
Why?
why?
It's open. It's
Yeah.
making space
Yeah.
for more information. I always like to say, you need more data, Jill. You need
Yeah.
more data. Go looking for more data in yourself and in other people. Raise your IQ level about what's going on in here or what's going on in them
Yeah.
and what's going on between you. So get more data on the table. And the last question I thought of was, how are my experiences let's see, I'm not saying that well. How are my experiences influencing my perception of the situation? How are their experiences influencing their perception of the situation? These are questions that help me be more curious.
Yeah. I like to ask the question, what are my blind spots?
Hmm.
What am I not seeing? Because I know I've got them. And if we can just assume we've got blind spots in every situation, no one knows everything about everything in every angle. So, what are my blind spots?
And I would add to that, that's a great question to be asking because just assuming you have them is great. And then what is this person seeing that I can't see?
Yeah.
And am
Yep.
I open and curious enough to get feedback from them to see if it's something that would be worth taking in and understanding about me? That's really
Yeah.
hard, but that is a highly differentiated question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And the other thing that I think is really important to remember is that curiosity may bring all of those things out, and they're all good benefits, but it also doesn't mean that you'll come to an agreement. You
Nope.
can, you can have full differentiation and still disagree.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be contentious, it can just be disagreement. You can still appreciate the perspective of the other person, have compassion, and see that maybe if I were them, I would feel exactly the way that they
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
And that favor, and this is the coolest part about it in differentiation, that favor can be returned. So they can feel that way about us. It doesn't mean they have to agree with us, and we're okay with them not agreeing with
Yeah.
us. We can just be like, yeah, it's okay that you don't agree with it. I'm just really glad that you understand me and who I am and why I feel what I feel.
It's the golden rule. Give to others what you would like to them to give to you. And I think
Yep.
sometimes when I'm really wanting to be understood, I'm really hoping and wishing that that person will get curious about me and
Yeah.
try to understand me as much as they can. And so can I do that with another person? Can I be
Yeah.
open and make enough space to do that with another person? Now, when I'm feeling threatened, that's pretty hard to do. So that's where I need to tap into that curiosity. Why am I feeling threat? Let me understand what's really going on in here.
Yeah. In fact, maybe I hope this isn't too much of a tangent, but I'd like us to even consider challenging the way that we see the golden rule, because sometimes we think seeing the golden rule is only giving to people the way that we see things,
Hmm.
but it's the openness that is the golden rule, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yes,
I'm going to give the integrity and the curiosity and the agency freedom, the flexibility that I want to someone else.
perfectly said. That's really great. And curiosity is a big part of this because you've got to be curious enough to learn what it is they want and need.
Yeah.
And be curious about yourself too. What's going
Yeah.
on?
Forcing someone to do it the way I do it, it's
Yeah.
really golden,
Not,
right?
that's not, yeah, what we're going for.
I mean, I
So
think
that's
it is
great.
because it's the way I do it.
Can I just share just really quickly a couple things that I think can build just the spirit of curiosity, the quality of curiosity in you? And we'll end with
Yeah.
this for today.
Yeah. You bet.
Okay. So here are some ways to cultivate more curiosity within yourself, just as a state of being. Tap into that true self state that is in all of us. Revisit some childhood joys. Remember when you were a kid and how just open and curious the world was?
Hmm.
Engage in activities from your childhood that you enjoyed, like flying a kite or riding a bike. Do some fun things like that. Another
Do you
thing,
have
do
one,
something.
Jill?
Do I have a favorite childhood memory?
Yeah,
It was so funny. I was on Pinterest the other day. I don't know if anybody's on there, but they post a lot of stuff from the 80s. I know I'm old.
nostalgia.
Yeah, and it was so fun to go through and look at like the different toys that I had or some of the stuff that was big in the 80s and I just felt it was so fun. I was just like tapping into this like younger part of me that was so kind of papered over with, adult responsibilities and it was just so fun to go back and think through that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, in fact, do you remember I sent you a picture of one? It was that little tray thing that had pop-up bowling pins with the little twisty bowling ball that had feet. Do you
yes,
remember that toy?
yes,
I
so
mean,
fun.
something like that just really can bring out
Yeah.
that joy.
That's
So
really fun. Another thing to do is to do something unexpected, like take a different route to work or stop at an unexpected place. Do you
so spontaneity.
Yeah. Do you remember getting lost when we would travel with Grandpa? We'd get lost, like, because it was back in the day when no GPS existed. So it was just maps. And, we'd go get lost somewhere. And Grandpa was just so positive about it. He'd just be like, oh, if it wasn't for getting lost, we wouldn't have been able to see this road. This is a really good road. And you would just get curious about being in a new place instead of frustrated with taking the wrong turn or something like that. Such a good way to be. Another one that I thought of is pick something random to learn about something that you've let go of in the past and revisit that. Another one is ask questions. Ask more questions and explore new perspectives. And the last one is explore new places. Visit even just a new restaurant or a new park. You don't even have to go anywhere, far away. But these are things that can open up that kind of quality of curiosity in us and help develop it so that it's more natural to us.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
great. If maybe I can close with just a quick story of how something that have done that, and maybe if I've shared this before, stop me, Jill, because
Okay.
I the podcasts blend together for me sometimes. But
Okay.
I learned to ski at age 38. I had put it off my entire life, and I just had said that's not for me. I wouldn't enjoy that. It seems really expensive. It seems really dangerous, and I'm not good with heights. I'm not good with cold, and so I just avoided it. And then my kids really wanted to learn how to ski. And I couldn't see myself just sending them up the mountain all by themselves all winter long. And so I thought, I guess I got to learn how to ski. And it was terrifying for me.
Was it uncomfortable? Did you have a little discomfort
I
doing
was
that?
so discomfort. I was so uncomfortable because there I am on the bunny hill. I'm a 6'6", 280 pound guy, and I'm doing, pizza, French fries, and I'm panicking. And there's these little 2 year olds just zipping by me, and then and then the other thing that scared me to death was the lift. And just
Oh, yeah.
at Beaver Mountain, the big lift, it doesn't have a pull down bar, right? It's
Mm.
just an open lift, and you're way up there. And I just sit there, and and my panic is setting in. But then I'm looking around, and I'm going, everybody's doing this. No one's falling off. So why am I assuming I'm the only one who's going to fall off? Especially when I'm hyper focused on not falling off. And so, anyway, I'm pushing the boundaries of my comfort as I'm learning this new skill. And the flight response is like kicking in. And but I just getting up there, it's a big chore. You invest all this money to try and learn this skill. And I think I can't back out now. I've got to learn this. I got to push through. And so after one season or two seasons of learning and growing, I cannot believe how much I've lived beneath my privilege because this skill that I didn't know I could learn, and I'm still not skilled. Like I'm a green
It depends on
run
who you're comparing. It's all relative.
through. That's right.
Yeah.
Like I really love an easy blue or green groomed run. I don't go off a groomer, and it is so much fun. I am amazed at how much how therapeutic it is, the peace, the beautiful nature, and the time with my children. It's just
So fun.
anyway.
You
I know that
tolerated
that's
some
just
discomfort for growth.
yeah. I know that that's just skiing, but it really shows the framework of dealing with discomfort to discover something new that will really bless your life and bring you joy.
Yeah. And where'd the curiosity come in? Just where like why am I freaking out that I'm sitting up
Yeah,
here on this? I'm looking around and I'm realizing nobody else is, I'm
that's
curious.
right.
Why do I feel like I'm gonna fall off?
That's right. Why am I letting myself not experience more things in this world because I'm crippled by fear?
Hmm.
And
Just getting curious
is
about that.
yeah, is the fear real? Like warranted? Or am I limiting myself? Am I
Am I
living
really
beneath my
in threat
privileges?
or am I just sensing that I am? And getting
That's
curious
right.
can help you figure out the difference.
Yep.
I love
And I
that.
did learn my limits. Like there are some types of skiing that I don't enjoy and I don't need to go back to it.
Yeah.
I like something a little more easy. And so
Those
not
double black
easy, but
diamonds. You stay away
yeah,
from the double
not
blacks.
my style, not my style, but I mean maybe it could. If I'm being really curious, I wouldn't limit myself there too. I'm not going to because I've got a bad back and it's not worth the
Yeah.
risk,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. It's a great example. I love it. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our discussion about curiosity. And it's been a great, I love it. It's been a fun discussion with you.
Yeah, that's been great. Okay. So and then on the next one, we're going to go to what? So
We're
we
going
go
to
from
talk about
curiosity.
self-compassion, and curiosity and self-compassion are really closely related.
Yeah.
You just read, you can tell that from what we've been talking about, how almost the extension, like the byproduct of curiosity oftentimes leads to this very strange sensation of compassion
Mhm.
for the self
Yeah.
and for others, right? And so they're really
Yeah.
tightly connected, but I really want to talk about self-compassion because I think it's really important.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
self-compassion, and then the
Another
one after
way,
that'll be
yeah,
values.
when we're tolerating discomfort, self-compassion can be really, really um, essential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jill. It's been fun.
Okay. We'll see you next time.
We'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.